The silver hull of the research vessel gleamed under the pale light of Kepler 186f. Inside the ship's main laboratory, Dr. Laura Bennett stared at the strange object floating in the containment field. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and dark circles under her eyes showed how little she had slept in the past week. "This can't be right," she muttered, adjusting her scanner for the 5th time. The readings made no sense. The artifact wasn't just old. It was ancient, predating human civilization by millions of years. But that wasn't what worried her. It was the energy signature coming from within. The door slid open with a soft hiss. "Dr. Bennett, you needed to see me." Captain Daniel Wright stepped into the lab, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "Yes, Captain. Look at this." Laura pointed to the holographic display. "The artifact isn't just giving off energy, it's trying to communicate." Daniel leaned closer, his blue eyes narrowing at the pulsing patterns on the screen. "Communicate? With what?" "Not what, Captain. With whom?" Laura pressed a button, and a new image appeared. These patterns match human brainwaves. It's trying to connect with our consciousness. The artifact had been found buried deep beneath the surface of Kepler 186's largest moon. At first, it seemed like any other alien relic, interesting but harmless. But as Laura's team began their studies, strange things started happening. "The night crew reported seeing shadows where there shouldn't be any," Daniel said, his voice low. "And yesterday, one of my officers swears she heard voices in empty corridors." Laura nodded. "It gets worse." She walked to another console and pulled up a series of images. "We found writing on the artifact. Dr. Martinez finished the translation an hour ago." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "It's a warning, Captain, about something that exists beyond death itself." The room grew colder, though the temperature controls hadn't changed. Daniel's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm. "What kind of warning?" "The civilization that created this. They called themselves the Ancestors. They fought a war unlike anything we've ever seen. Not against flesh and blood, but against beings that exist in a dimension parallel to ours. Beings that feed on consciousness itself." A soft alarm began to beep from one of the monitors. Laura rushed over, her face paling. "Captain, the energy readings are spiking." The artifact began to pulse with a soft blue light. In the containment field, shadows seemed to dance and twist in impossible ways. Laura's instruments went crazy, recording energy patterns that shouldn't exist according to known physics. "We need to shut it down," Daniel ordered, reaching for his communicator. "Wait." Laura held up her hand. "Look at the patterns. They're forming words." On the main screen, lines of text began to appear. "They come. The void hungers. Pour pair." The lights in the lab flickered. In the shadows of the room, both Laura and Daniel saw movement, shapes that disappeared when looked at directly. The air grew thick with an electric tension. "Security team to the main lab." Daniel barked into his communicator. "Full containment protocols." Laura didn't move from her console. "Captain, if what the Ancestors wrote is true, we're dealing with something far beyond our understanding. These entities, they don't just kill. They consume what makes us human. Our thoughts, our memories, our very essence." The security team burst through the door, weapons ready, but their arrival coincided with a massive surge from the artifact. The containment field flickered and died. In that moment, every shadow in the room seemed to come alive. Laura felt a cold touch brush against her mind, like icy fingers probing her thoughts. Besides her, Daniel gasped, his hand going to his head. "Everyone out," he shouted. "Emergency protocols. Seal the lab." As they rushed through the door, Laura grabbed the data core containing her research. The heavy blast doors slammed shut behind them, but not before she saw the artifact rise into the air, surrounded by writhing darkness. In the corridor, catching their breath, Daniel turned to Laura. "Tell me honestly, Doctor, how bad is this?" Laura looked at the data core in her hands, then back at the sealed lab. Captain, I think we just started a war. But not the kind humanity has ever fought before. We need to contact Earth immediately. We need the Council. The ship's AI came to life. Warning. Unknown energy signatures detected in multiple sections. Ship-wide quarantine protocols initiating. Through the viewport, Laura could see the moon's surface below. It looked peaceful, unaware of the ancient horror they had just awakened. She thought about the artifact's warning, about the beings that existed beyond death, and for the first time in her career, she felt true fear. Captain, she said quietly, I think this is just the beginning. Daniel nodded grimly. Send the emergency signal. Priority 1. And Doctor. He paused, looking at the sealed lab door. Pray we haven't just opened Pandora's box. As the emergency lights bathed the corridor in red, Laura could swear she heard whispers in the darkness, whispers in a language no human throat could produce. The war beyond death had begun, and humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet. Back in the lab, sealed and empty, the artifact continued to pulse with its eerie blue light, and in the shadows around it, something watched, and waited, and hungered. The message had to reach Earth. The Human Space Council needed to know. But as Laura rushed to the communications center with Daniel, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by eyes that existed in dimensions beyond their comprehension. Humanity had always looked to the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now they had their answer, but it wasn't the one they had hoped for. In the darkness between worlds, ancient entities stirred, awakening from their long slumber. The war beyond death was about to begin. The emergency meeting chamber of the Human Space Council buzzed with tension. Administrator Peter Collins stood at the center of the circular room, his face illuminated by the holographic displays showing the incident at Kepler 186f. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space, their faces grave as they watched the footage from the research vessel. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. What you've just seen represents the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. Dr. Catherine Murphy stepped forward. Her reputation as Earth's leading expert in quantum consciousness had earned her a place at this meeting. The energy signatures we detected aren't just random patterns. They show signs of intelligence, but not any kind we've ever encountered. The room erupted in murmurs. A military officer stood up. Are we certain this isn't some kind of natural phenomenon? I've analyzed Dr. Bennett's data thoroughly, Catherine replied. These entities exist in a dimension that overlaps with ours. They're as real as we are, just different, and they're spreading. The holographic display changed to show a map of human space. Red dots appeared, marking locations where similar energy signatures had been detected since the Kepler incident. 3 colonies have already reported strange occurrences, Peter continued. People seeing impossible shadows, hearing voices, experiencing memories that aren't their own. And now we have our first casualties. The room fell silent as images appeared of the Beta Hydra colony. Empty halls, abandoned rooms, and security footage showing people walking into shadows and simply vanishing. 200 colonists, Catherine said softly. Gone in less than an hour. Their bodies remained, but their consciousness, everything that made them who they were, vanished. Peter activated another display. This is why we're forming a special division. The Human Space Council will now oversee all operations regarding these entities. Dr. Murphy will lead the research team. We can't fight what we don't understand, Catherine added. But we've made some progress. The entities seem drawn to human consciousness specifically. They ignore other life forms completely. A scientist raised his hand. Could it be because of our capacity for abstract thought? Exactly, Catherine nodded. Our consciousness operates on a different level than other known species. Somehow, these entities can sense that. They're hungry for it. The room's lights flickered briefly, causing several people to jump. Ever since the Kepler incident, such occurrences had become common across human space. We've already begun developing new technology, Peter announced. Dr. Murphy's team has created the first prototype of a consciousness detector. It can sense when these entities are near. Catherine picked up a small device from the table. It looked like a simple wristband, but its surface shimmered with subtle patterns. We've discovered that human consciousness leaves a kind of wake in space-time. These entities leave similar patterns, but distorted. The detector can tell the difference. What about weapons? Someone asked. How do we fight something that isn't physically here? Peter's face grew grim. That's our biggest challenge. Conventional weapons are useless. But we found something interesting in the ancient texts, Dr. Bennett discovered. A holographic display showed symbols from the artifact. The ancestors fought these entities before. They developed technology that could interact with consciousness itself. We're working to understand their methods. Catherine stepped forward again. But we've already discovered something they didn't know. Human consciousness has a unique property. We can resist these entities. Some people are naturally more resistant than others. We don't know why yet, but it's giving us hope. Suddenly, every detector in the room began to buzz. The lights dimmed, and shadows in the corners seemed to deepen. Everyone stay calm, Peter ordered. They're drawn to fear. Catherine checked her instruments. They're watching us, learning. They'd been doing it since we first found that artifact. The shadows retreated slowly, but the message was clear. The entities were getting bolder. We need to act fast, Peter announced. As of this moment, the Human Space Council is shifting to war footing. All research will be focused on understanding and fighting these entities. Dr. Murphy will coordinate with military leadership to develop defensive measures. What do we tell the public? Someone asked. Peter looked around the room. The truth. People need to know what we're facing. But we also tell them we're fighting back. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. We've survived because we stand together. Catherine's detector beeped again, but softer this time. They're retreating. But they'll be back. They always come back. Then we'll be ready, Peter said firmly. The Council has full authority to use any resources necessary. We're not just fighting for our lives now, we're fighting for our very souls. As the meeting ended, Catherine stayed behind, studying her readings. The entities had been present during the entire session, watching from dimensions humans could barely perceive. But she had noticed something else too. When humans stood united, when they showed courage instead of fear, the entities retreated. We can win this, she whispered to herself. We have to. Outside the chamber, Peter looked out a viewport at Earth below. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ancient horrors were gathering. But humanity would face them together, ready to fight a war that went beyond death itself. The Human Space Council had formed. The battle for consciousness had begun. Major Susan Carter stood on the bridge of the TSS Defiant, watching the swirling darkness that surrounded her ship. The void entities had grown bolder in the past month, and now they were about to face them in open battle for the first time. All crews report ready, her second-in-command announced. Consciousness shields at maximum power. Susan nodded, her hand resting on the new weapon at her hip. A consciousness disruptor, fresh from Dr. Murphy's lab. Begin the operation. Let's show these things that humanity isn't easy prey. The Arcturus system had become a battleground. 3 days ago, the entities had surrounded the main colony, trapping 10,000 people inside their own minds. The Defiant led a fleet of 5 ships, all equipped with the latest HFY technology. Energy spike detected. A sensor operator called out. They're moving in. The darkness outside the ship began to take shape. What had once been formless shadows now formed into massive, twisting patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. The entities had learned to manifest more clearly, making themselves known to their prey. Launch the consciousness buoys, Susan ordered. The new devices shot out from the ship, creating a network of energy that could detect and track the void entities' movements. Dr. John Martinez's voice came over the comm from the science lab. Major, the readings are off the scale. They're not just attacking randomly anymore. They're coordinating. They learn fast, Susan muttered. All ships, initiate attack pattern Delta. Remember your training. Keep your minds focused. Don't let them in. The fleet moved in perfect formation, their consciousness shields creating a web of protection. The void entities struck first, tendrils of darkness reaching for the ship's hulls. Where they touched, crew members cried out as they felt the cold probe of alien thoughts. Hold steady, Susan commanded. Fire the disruptors. Beams of pure thought energy shot out from the ships, cutting through the darkness. The void entities recoiled, their forms rippling with what might have been pain. But they didn't retreat. Major, Dr. Martinez called again. I'm detecting something new. The entities, they're trying to communicate. Susan felt it too, a pressure in her mind, like words trying to form in a language she couldn't understand. Keep them out. All crews, strengthen your mental barriers. The battle raged across dimensions. Physical weapons passed harmlessly through the void entities, but the consciousness disruptors hurt them. The entities responded by changing tactics, merging into larger forms that loomed over the human fleet. They're adapting, Susan realized. But so can we. Dr. Martinez, remember your theory about human abstract thought? Yes, Major. Our ability to think in concepts gives us an advantage. We can imagine things that don't exist. We can shape reality with our minds. Then let's use it. All crews, focus your thoughts. Remember what we practiced. Think of light, of warmth, of life itself. The consciousness shields began to pulse with new energy as the crews focused their thoughts. The void entities hesitated, their massive forms wavering. It's working, Dr. Martinez shouted. Their energy patterns are destabilizing. Susan pressed her advantage. All ships, full power to the disruptors. Fire on my mark. The void entities suddenly surged forward, as if making one final attempt to break through. Susan felt the cold touch of alien thoughts pressing against her mind, trying to find a way in. Fire. 5 beams of concentrated thought energy struck the heart of the void entity swarm. There was no sound in space, but everyone felt the psychic scream that followed. The darkness shattered like glass, fragments of void scattering across the stars. Report, Susan called out. Entities are retreating. The sensor operator replied. Colony shields are holding. We did it, Major. We won. But Susan wasn't celebrating yet. Dr. Martinez, what did we learn? Everything, Major. The entities aren't invincible. They can be hurt by focused human consciousness. And more importantly, they showed signs of actual tactical thinking. They're not just predators. They're intelligent. Susan walked to the viewport, watching the last traces of darkness fade away. Which means they can be reasoned with, or at least understood. There's something else, Dr. Martinez added. During the battle, I detected patterns in their communication attempts. I think they were surprised. They've never encountered a species that could fight back before. The fleet regrouped, preparing to secure the colony. Susan knew this victory was just the beginning. The void entities would return, stronger and smarter than before. But humanity had proven something today. They could fight back against death itself. Send word to the council, she ordered. Tell them we've won the first battle, but tell them something else too. We need to understand these entities better. Fighting them isn't enough. We need to know why they're here, what they want. As the fleet moved to protect the colony, Susan couldn't shake the feeling that the void entities were still watching, still learning. They had started this war thinking humans were just another prey species. Now they knew differently. The real question was, what would they do with that knowledge? The first strike had been successful, but the war beyond death was far from over. In the darkness between stars, the void entities retreated, but they would return. And next time, they would be ready for humanity's defiance. Susan Carter looked at her crew, saw the determination in their eyes, and knew that humanity would be ready too. Dr. William Hayes stared at the glowing core of the Soul engine, his life's work finally complete. The massive device hummed with energy, sending ripples through both physical space and the consciousness dimension. All readings are stable, his assistant reported. The engine is ready for full power testing. Admiral Mary Patterson walked around the device, her keen eyes taking in every detail. Will it work, Doctor? Can it really push them back? It will do more than that, William said. The soul engine doesn't just detect or disrupt the void entities, it can reach into their dimension. For the first time, we can take the fight to them. The ethereal fleet hung in orbit above Earth, 20 ships equipped with smaller versions of the soul engine. Each vessel had been specially designed to operate in both normal space and the void dimension. Begin the power-up sequence, Mary ordered. All ships prepare for dimensional shift. The soul engine's hum grew louder. Around it, reality itself seemed to bend and twist. William checked his instruments, watching as energy levels climbed steadily. Admiral, he said, we're detecting void entity activity. They know what we're doing. They're coming. Mary nodded grimly. Good. Let them come. This time we're ready. The void entities appeared suddenly, massive shapes of living darkness that made the stars disappear. But they were different now, more solid, more defined. They had evolved since their first encounters with humanity. Soul engine at full power, William announced, ready to initiate dimensional shift. Mary's voice rang out across all channels. All ships, prepare for transition. Remember your training. Keep your minds focused. We make history today. The soul engine pulsed once, twice, and then reality changed. The ships of the ethereal fleet shifted sideways into another dimension, entering the realm where the void entities lived. The view was impossible to describe in human terms. Colors that didn't exist mixed with shapes that couldn't be real. But the void entities were here, in their true form. They're beautiful, someone whispered over the comm. William had to agree. In their own dimension, the void entities were creatures of pure consciousness, patterns of thought given form. But they were also hungry, consuming any consciousness they found to sustain themselves. Launch the interface probes, Mary commanded. Let's show them what human consciousness can really do. The probes shot out from each ship, creating a web of human thought in the void dimension. For the first time, real communication became possible. Images and concepts flooded through the network. The void entities were ancient, older than human civilization by millions of years. They had consumed countless species, but none had ever fought back like humanity. They're scared, William realized, reading the data. They've never encountered anything like the soul engine before. They've never had to deal with prey that could enter their dimension. The void entities gathered, their forms merging into something massive. But the ethereal fleet was ready. All ships, power up your soul engines, Mary ordered. Prepare to show them humanity's response to being hunted. The smaller soul engines activated in sequence, creating a cascade of consciousness energy that rippled through the void dimension. The void entities recoiled, their forms disrupted by the pure human thought. They're trying to communicate again, William reported. The patterns are clearer here. They're offering something. The void entity's message came through the interface probes. They would spare Earth, spare humanity, if they were given other worlds to feed on. Mary's response was immediate. Tell them no. We don't sacrifice others to save ourselves. The void entities struck then, their full power crashing against the fleet's defenses. But in this dimension, human consciousness was just as real as their dark energy. Soul engines to full power, Mary commanded. Push them back. The battle that followed couldn't be described in normal terms. It was a war of thoughts, of will, of pure consciousness fighting against ancient hunger. The void entities had power and experience, but humanity had something they didn't understand: choice. They can't comprehend it, William said, watching the data stream. We choose to fight them. We choose to protect others. They operate on pure instinct, feed or die. But we can decide to be different. The soul engines pulsed in harmony, creating a wave of human consciousness that swept through the void dimension. The void entities scattered before it, their forms breaking apart. "It's working," William shouted. "We're actually pushing them back." The void entities retreated, but not before sending one final message through the interface probes. This wasn't over. They would return, stronger than before. "Let them come," Mary said quietly. "We'll be waiting." The ethereal fleet shifted back to normal space, the soul engines powering down. Earth's sun never looked so beautiful as it did after seeing the void dimension. "We've proven something today," William said to Mary. "The void entities can be fought. They can be beaten. But more importantly, we might be able to find a way to coexist." Mary looked at the soul engine, still humming softly. "One battle at a time, Doctor. For now, we've shown them that humanity isn't just food. We're something new in their eternal existence. We're equals." The counterattack had succeeded, but both William and Mary knew this was just another step in the war. The void entities would adapt, would learn, would come back with new strategies. But humanity would be ready. The soul engine had changed everything. The war beyond death had entered a new phase, and for the first time since it began, hope was more than just a dream. It was a weapon. The final battle wasn't what anyone expected. Dr. Laura Bennett stood in the control room of the massive soul engine complex, looking at readings that seemed impossible even after everything they'd seen. "They're not attacking," she said to the assembled leaders. "They're waiting." The void entities had gathered in unprecedented numbers. Their darkness filled the space between Earth and Mars, yet they made no hostile moves. After 3 years of war, something had changed. "Dr. Bennett," Admiral Mary Patterson called from the command center. "The translation matrix is picking up complex patterns. They want to talk." Laura moved to the main console where Dr. Catherine Murphy was already analyzing the data. The soul engine hummed beneath their feet, ready to defend Earth if needed. "This is different from their previous attempts at communication," Catherine said. "It's more structured, almost like they're using parts of our own consciousness patterns to form the messages." The void entities had evolved through their conflict with humanity. They had learned, adapted, and now seemed to understand concepts that had once been foreign to them. Choice, cooperation, alternative paths. Initiating direct communication, Laura announced. The soul engine shifted slightly, creating a bridge between dimensions. The message that came through was clear. "We understand now." "Understand what?" Laura asked through the consciousness interface. "Choice, purpose, life beyond feeding. You showed us there are other ways to exist." Admiral Patterson stepped forward. "Can we trust them?" Laura studied the patterns carefully. After first contact with the void entities, she had dedicated herself to understanding them. "They're being truthful. They've changed. We've changed them." The void entities continued. "We feed on consciousness, but you showed us consciousness can be shared, not just consumed. We offer peace." They're talking about symbiosis, Catherine realized. They've learned that working together can benefit both sides. The gathered leaders discussed the implications. The void entities had been enemies, predators that consumed entire civilizations. But humanity had fought them to a standstill and shown them another way. "What exactly are they proposing?" Admiral Patterson asked. The answer came through the interface. "Let us exist alongside. We share consciousness. You share existence. Both grow stronger. Both survive." Laura explained. "They're offering a partnership. Their ability to exist beyond death combined with our capacity for growth and change. It's something entirely new." The soul engine pulsed as more void entities joined the communication. They shared images of possibilities, humans and void entities working together, exploring dimensions neither could reach alone, growing beyond their current limitations. "It's not just peace they're offering," Laura said quietly. "It's evolution. For both species." Admiral Patterson turned to the assembled leaders. "We need to make a decision. The entire human race needs to know about this choice. The next few hours were intense. The void entities waited patiently while humanity debated, discussed, and finally decided. Representatives from every human colony cast their votes. Laura stood before the Soul Engine, preparing to deliver humanity's answer. The void entities gathered closer, their darkness now feeling less threatening and more anticipatory. "We accept your offer," she transmitted through the interface. "But there must be rules, boundaries. We work together as equals." The void entity's response was immediate. Equals. Partners. A new way of existence. The implementation began slowly. Volunteer groups worked with friendly void entities, learning to share consciousness safely. The soul engines were repurposed from weapons to communication devices, bridges between dimensions. Laura watched as the first successful merging took place, a human consciousness working in harmony with a void entity, both maintaining their individuality while sharing their strengths. "It's beautiful," Catherine said, monitoring the process. "They're not just coexisting, they're creating something entirely new." The war beyond death had ended not with destruction, but with understanding. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and found not just survival, but transcendence. Admiral Patterson joined them at the observation window. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, the darkness of the void entities now danced with points of light. Human consciousness shared willingly, creating patterns of impossible beauty. "We did it," Laura said softly. "We found a way beyond the war." "No," Catherine corrected her. "We found a way beyond death itself. This is just the beginning." The void entities pulsed in agreement, their ancient hunger transformed into something new. A desire to grow, to learn, to share rather than consume. Humanity had reached a new stage of existence. The Human Space Council had led them through war into peace, through death into something beyond it. The future was uncertain, but it was filled with possibilities that neither humans nor void entities had imagined before. Laura looked at the swirling patterns of consciousness in space, remembering the artifact that had started it all. The ancestors had fought the void entities, but humanity had done something better. They had made them friends. The war beyond death was over. The journey beyond life had just begun. In the vast darkness of space, humans and void entities began their new existence together, proving that even the oldest of enemies could become the strongest of allies. This was humanity's greatest victory, not defeating death, but transcending it. Together, they looked to the stars, ready to explore dimensions unknown, united in purpose, stronger in partnership than they had ever been in conflict. The end was just the beginning.